Does setting personal boundaries make you feel selfish or like you're being difficult? You're not alone. A lot of people feel that way. Actually, you communicating your wants and desires shows that you have high self-worth. Today I'll tell you why setting healthy boundaries and enforcing boundaries is good for you and your relationships. I see this all the time with my clients, where they really struggle with setting boundaries. It's a super common struggle, and if you feel that struggle, don't feel bad about it. They believe that saying something about their needs will put someone else in a difficult position or cause drama. Sometimes they're worried that setting boundaries will create conflict between you and your loved ones. If this is something that you've struggled with, then this is a great video for you, since I'm going to be breaking down why setting boundaries is not only healthy for your relationship, but is actually a necessity to create a strong and long-lasting relationship. Here's 5 truths about boundaries that every high-value woman needs to know. Truth number 1, good and bad boundaries exist. Here's the difference between them. A bad boundary is something that can send mixed signals. A bad boundary can be unsustainable and unrealistic. It can put your partner in a bad position and may be unreasonable. For example, I knew a woman whose partner wanted her to give up her relationship with her children to be with him. That's a bad boundary. It's the same red flag for potential partners whose boundaries ask you to give up essential parts of yourself, your hopes, your dreams, your careers, friends, and other important things to you. Bad boundaries are just not acceptable and not something that you should have to put up with. So I bet you're wondering, what's a good boundary then? A good boundary is something based on your own high self-worth and expectations of how you deserve to be treated and respected in a relationship. A healthy boundary effectively communicates where you will and will not go. Let me give you an example of what I mean. When I work with people who are going out into the dating world, one of the things they're worried about is being accepted because they may have too high of a standard or too high of expectations. Don't worry about that so much. Because here's the thing, if you have those expectations, you need to communicate them. If the person you're dating does not want to live up to those expectations, then what they're encountering is a boundary that they may not want to follow, an expectation they may not want to meet, which tells you that they may not actually be the right person. So when you're setting those boundaries, make sure to make them explicitly clear what they are and stand with them for yourself so that you can end up feeling good, putting your head on the pillow, knowing that you lived the life you want to live. Truth number 2 about boundaries. Sharing and enforcing your boundaries is not selfish. Let me repeat that. Sharing and enforcing your boundaries is not selfish. You might feel like it is because you're not used to asking for things for yourself. But the truth is that communicating your boundaries isn't selfish, it's responsible. You are showing your partner what will and won't work in a relationship. When I have a client struggling with setting boundaries, I often tell her that by sharing boundaries, she is in essence handing her partner the rules on how to win in this relationship. This not only gives him a better chance at success with her, but also shows him the type of game she's willing to play. Which, by the way, is the theme of my entire channel, how to win at relationships. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure to stick around. Okay, so if you, as a high-value woman, say, I want to have a relationship built on equality, where we can challenge each other to be our best by being on time, being honest, and by making an effort with my friends and family, that's great. You've just told him the game you want to play. Now it's up to him to see if he wants to play that game. If he doesn't want to play that game, then isn't it better if he doesn't stick around and waste your time and his time? How many of you have wasted your time with a guy who wasn't interested in playing the same game as you? Tell me in the comments what happened. Communicating your boundaries is especially important when it comes to things like PDA, sex, and deep emotional intimacy. It's important to share what you like and what you want, and ultimately what you don't as well. That way you can be more successful. I have found that by knowing my personal boundaries, it helps me make better decisions about my relationship. Let me give you an example. I have a boundary called monogamy. If you are with me, I don't want you dating other people. For me to share this boundary is not selfish, and it's not selfish for me to ask you to agree to it. The only way to have a successful relationship is to share your boundaries and not hold them back. I'll talk more about this in a second. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video and find it useful for you, please do me a favor and hit that like button. It makes me happy to know that I'm being helpful. Truth number 3 is you must have conversations about your boundaries. It is a must. If you want your relationship to work, then this point is critical. You deserve to have your boundaries respected. That's a given. But if you don't actually share what they are, how is he going to know where the lines in the sand are and if he's crossing them? If you don't share your boundaries with him, all you are doing is setting him and you up to fail, and he's going to resent you for that. So don't do that. If you want your boundaries to be successful and respected, you also have to remain open to talking about them. It might not be a one and done conversation. If you say that you don't want him hanging around with his ex, that is a fine boundary to set. However, without any sort of discussion or context, you may not be on the same page and you may be sending mixed signals. If you set a boundary, he has the right to ask you why. If you say, I don't like you hanging out with her because she talks behind my back and is all over you physically, then that gives him way more context as to why you don't want it and helps him respect your boundaries better. This creates healthy discussion and understanding between the two of you. So remember my boundary earlier about monogamy? You might be thinking, isn't that everyone's boundary? In reality, no, it isn't. I work with clients who are in open relationships, who swing, who are married and have boyfriends and girlfriends. To assume that monogamy is a shared boundary just simply isn't accurate anymore. If monogamy is my boundary, then I need to say something. If I don't communicate it, then how will you know that it matters to me? It's also important if you set a boundary that you follow it too. If I say that you need to be with me and only me, but I get to be with other people, that's just not going to fly. That's going to create imbalance in the relationship. If we agree on boundaries, they need to apply to both of us. When it comes to boundaries, they can also be non-compatible. I dated a girl for a while who wanted to keep things open when I didn't, and you know what? It didn't go very well. I felt like I wasn't that important to her, especially when she was out with other guys. For me, I need to know that my person is my person, and she wasn't able to give me what I needed. We had incompatible boundaries, and even though we tried to make it work, neither of us had our needs met, and we eventually broke up. We were not creating a healthy dynamic, and it's no surprise that it just didn't last. Truth number 4 is, breaking boundaries isn't always the death of a relationship. If you set a boundary and he breaks it, that doesn't have to mean the end of the relationship. In fact, a broken boundary can be a learning opportunity and something that makes you guys stronger together, but only if you're both willing to learn from it. You see, when you or your partner bring up a break in the rules of the relationship, a high-value man should be responsible and willing to resolve it by actually addressing what you're saying and looking for ways to do it differently in the future. Here's a scenario I've seen with a lot of people that I work with. It's Friday, and the couple usually has dinner together. She's waiting and waiting for her guy to show up so that they can eat dinner together, and lo and behold, he doesn't show. Hours later, he finally shows up and he's buzzed and he's already eaten and he's been out with his buddies, and he didn't say anything to her. And you know what? She is furious. And let's face it, you'd probably be upset too, right? That's because in this situation, she has a boundary and expectation called honest communication, and he didn't follow it. He didn't tell her his plans had changed or checked in or tried to make a different plan. And let's be honest, texting isn't that hard. Checking in is easy, especially in this day and age, and he still didn't do it. Now he has to deal with the consequences. Truth number 5 is setting boundaries is actually amazing self-care. When you set boundaries in your life, you are establishing yourself as a powerful and high-value woman who has standards and high self-worth. And you know what? That is the life you deserve to live. But you have to be the one that gives it to yourself. That's why we're setting these boundaries. This is important in a world where people are always trying to change us. Women start to lose themselves when they sacrifice themselves in order to keep a man. If a low-value man is threatened by who you are and your boundaries, that they pressure you to give them up, then they aren't who you want to be with. Because they're not going to be the person long-term who's going to value a person like you. Trust me, from both my experience and those of my clients, the amount of heartbreak and pain associated with this kind of sacrifice just simply is not worth it. The lies you have to tell yourself in order to make it work are just simply too high of a price to pay. Remember that boundaries are healthy, not selfish. Enforcing boundaries is important for a healthy relationship and also shows your partner that you have high self-worth. If you remain open to having conversations about your boundaries and having good communication with your partner, you'll be well on your way to creating your best relationship.